The first time I met Jack, he was wearing a skirt, though it didn't seem like a big deal to anyone else. I was at an event a friend had dragged me to, a casual art show / potluck in Bed-Stuy, an excuse to drink in a backyard on a hot Saturday afternoon. That's where I first saw Jack. He looked like any other guy, with short brown hair, a few days' worth of stubble, a loose white t-shirt, and chunky Doc Martens. But then I kept noticing him, standing in the shaded yard, wearing a leather skirt. It was strange because, for some reason, I seemed to be the only one who noticed. Jack and I didn't talk that day, but about a week later, we crossed paths again. Fate has a funny way of working, or maybe coincidences are more common than we think. Whatever it was, it had us in the same bar at the same time, and that couldn't have been by chance. He was with a guy, someone who seemed like a close friend. Jack was wearing the same leather skirt, but this time his shirt was a tucked-in button-up, still androgynous, but not overly feminine. It was barely pink, almost white. I couldn't help but keep glancing at him from across the bar, my attention drifting away from my friends. It didn't make sense to me how he could be so comfortable, sitting with his legs crossed, acting like that was just the norm. I stepped outside for a smoke, standing on the sidewalk, lost in thought as the noise of the city buzzed around me. That's when a voice caught my attention. It wasn't high or soft, just a smooth, melodic tenor. "Hey, you got a light?" I turned and offered him my lighter, and we found ourselves face to face. "Oh, hey. Weren't you at Ashley's thing last weekend?" he asked, taking the lighter from me, flicking it to light his cigarette before handing it back. "I'm Jack." He was a couple of inches taller than me, something I didn't expect. The first thing that came to my mind was how I had to look up just a bit to meet his eyes, which were a murky blue-gray with a faint ring of dark eyeliner. His long lashes fluttered as he waited for me to respond. "Oh, yeah. The thing last weekend. I think I saw you there." Up close, I could see that the stubble from earlier was gone, his skin smooth and fair despite the harsh fluorescent glow from the streetlights. His sharp cheekbones and pouty lips gave him a distinct look. "I know," he said, his words lingering in the smoky air. "So where's your cute girl at?" "Katie?" "No, we're not like that," I quickly said, unsure why I felt the need to shut down the assumption. "Too bad for her." Jack didn't sound too disappointed, especially not with the way he gently touched my arm. I laughed nervously, feeling heat rush to my cheeks. Yeah, no, sorry." I reached for his hand, which had settled on my wrist. "Sorry, I'm not gay." "That's all right." "Neither am I." His touch lingered. I pulled my arm away, pretending to flick my cigarette but into a tree. "No, really." "I'm flattered," I stammered, realizing he was just teasing me. I decided to throw a little banter back. "Hey, what kind of guy wears a skirt, anyway?" I gestured toward his hairless, skinny legs, which had caught my attention all night. "It wouldn't be gay if I just thought of you as a girl, right?" He raised an eyebrow, a hint of uncertainty flashing across his face. I thought I'd gained the upper hand. I smiled, feeling confident, though probably not as cool as I thought. "But, nah, I don't think you're my type," I added with an exaggerated shrug. "Even if you are pretty." As I walked back inside, I wasn't sure if I added that last part to keep Jack off balance or because it slipped out. But it stuck with me. I had called another guy pretty, not cute, pretty. There's a difference. After a few more drinks, I convinced myself I'd gone a bit too far with the teasing. But that was it. A few months later, I kissed Jack for the first time. It wasn't some grand, romantic moment, it felt anticlimactic, like it should have been more. I don't really remember the kiss itself, just bits and pieces, not enough to make it feel like a lasting memory. But that's the thing, right? The first kiss is supposed to be special. Who tells a story about their second kiss? I was at the entrance of a building on Flatbush, far from the usual subway stops I knew, juggling a bottle of wine and some beer, struggling to open the door before the buzzer cut off. It was a Christmas party, and the ugly sweater I'd grabbed from Goodwill that afternoon wasn't exactly filling me with holiday spirit. Katie was supposed to meet me there, but I got a text on my way over, she was running late. Normally, that wouldn't be a problem. I could find somewhere to kill time, maybe walk around the block until she showed up. But everyone else who'd planned on attending had cancelled, scared off by the freezing rain. So, I swallowed my social anxiety and decided to head inside to a room full of strangers. I had to ring the buzzer again, and when I did, I was ready this time. Just as the door opened, someone called out to hold it. Without thinking, I stepped my leg out to catch it with my ankle, wincing when I nearly dropped the booze in my arms. A helping hand swooped in to save the bottle. "Thanks for the assist," I said, grateful someone took the wine from me before it became a mess on the lobby floor. "Hey, I know you." He pulled down his hood, and it was the face I'd been thinking about more than a couple times since that awkward cigarette exchange back in the summer. His hair was longer now, purposefully shaggy and just past his collar. And this time, he'd gone all out with his makeup, bright red lips, rosy cheeks, and silver and pink eyeshadow with frosty glitter along his fluttering lashes. "It's Jack," he said. Not that I needed the reminder. How could I forget? "Yeah, I remember." "I know you do." He smiled that teasing smile, the same one he had when we first met. "I'm trying to get you to tell me your name." I shifted nervously on my feet. "Ryan." I put my hand out for a handshake, but he ignored it and pulled me into a hug instead. As he embraced me, the wet sleet from his coat dripped onto me, and my arms, still full with the booze, kept us from getting too close. I noticed the difference in our heights, especially with the heels he was wearing. The hug lingered, or maybe it just felt that way. "So, how do you know Jasmine?" he asked when he let me go. "I don't, not really. She's an acquaintance, but we hang out with a lot of the same people." My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I checked the message on my watch. It was Katie, she wasn't coming after all. Turns out they all decided to stay home. Jack's face lit up, and with a playful twinkle in his eye, he said, "You're in luck, cutie. I'm flying solo tonight, too. Want to be my date?" Then, before I could respond, he added, "Oh right, you're not into guys. Especially not ones wearing skirts." He fluttered his coat open, and I couldn't help but reconsider my previous stance. His outfit was just as bold as his makeup, a Coca-Cola red, low-cut sweater and skirt combo. The velvet top clung to him, its square neckline showing off his chest. His abs were barely covered by the waistband of his mid-thigh flared skirt. His legs were wrapped in striped tights like candy canes, completed by knee-high patent boots. Everything, shirt, skirt, boots, was trimmed with fluffy, snow-white cotton. It was, without a doubt, one of the most daring Mrs. Claus outfits I'd ever seen. I'm not going to say it made me question anything, but I figured there was no harm in looking. Date? Maybe not. But since you stole my bottle of wine, maybe we can work something out? He rolled his eyes with a wordless scoff, turning to head upstairs. I followed a few steps behind, as we climbed the 4 flights of stairs. Watching his skirt swish with each landing, one thought kept playing in my mind, was he wearing panties under that? Why did I care what underwear another guy was wearing? The party was already packed, mostly with people I didn't know, friends of Jasmine's roommates. Jack stopped a few times to greet people he knew, and watching him with others made it clear, he was just like that with everyone, outgoing, fun, and flirty. His behavior with me wasn't anything special. I stayed close for a while, enjoying how at ease he seemed in any group, but I didn't want to fall into the trap of sticking to the one person I knew and becoming clingy. I wandered off to find Jasmine, but she had disappeared into her bedroom with her boyfriend shortly after I arrived, and I must have missed her if she came back out. Not that she was the only one sneaking off, she was just lucky enough to have some privacy. Mistletoe was hung up in strategic spots around the apartment, and more than a few people were definitely using the excuse to get closer. I honestly didn't think stuff like that worked in real life, but the results were clear enough. If only it was working for me. I coped with the awkwardness of standing on the edge of conversations by drinking faster, which gave me a good reason to duck out of any awkward small talk when I needed another drink. This wasn't the best strategy. The wine and beers were taking their toll, but it was the spiked cider in the crockpot that really knocked me out. The night blurred, and before I knew it, I'd nodded off in a corner of the living room. I was gently shaken awake, and when I opened my eyes, I saw that familiar pretty face. "Come on, hun. Let's get you home." The party had mostly cleared out. I struggled to stand, leaning on Jack's shoulder as we made our way downstairs. I didn't even remember when he called the Uber, but it was waiting for us at the curb. I drifted in and out of sleep, catching bits of whatever conversation Jack was having with me. I must have told him my address at some point, because the next thing I knew, the car pulled up to my building, and Jack was helping me to my front door. I mumbled a thank you and good night, and he gave me a knowing grin. As I fumbled through my pockets for my keys, I looked back to see Jack waving, holding a small sprig of waxy green leaves in his hand. Once I got upstairs, I rushed to the bathroom just in time for the night's drinks to make their exit. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, and a streak of red smeared across my wrist. For a split second, my drunk brain panicked, thinking I was bleeding, but after a quick check, I realized it was just a smear of lipstick. And beneath it, in black ink, was Jack's phone number written on my forearm. The first time I tried to make sense of what was going on between me and Jack, I ended up more confused than ever. I had tried and failed to piece together that night, the only thing I could remember clearly, the softness of his pouty lips and the sweet, cinnamony perfume. I would have thought it was a dream if not for the evidence on my face when I got home. I knew I could always text Jack to find out what happened, his number was in my phone now, but the thought made my stomach churn with anxiety. By the middle of the week, curiosity had gotten the best of me, and I finally texted him. I didn't ask directly, not that I think he'd have hesitated to tease me if I had. After a few exchanges, we agreed to meet up. He mentioned something about a work-related event and how he could use a friend to keep him company. Jack told me to meet him in the city, all the way on the Upper West Side. I wasn't sure if I was early or if he was just late, since we never set an exact time, just around 1 o'clock. I hung around outside the park, looking over the large lawn and the people lounging on the cold brown grass. I wondered what Jack had in mind for the day. He had only told me to dress J.Crew, whatever that meant. I hoped my blue Oxford, khakis, and a dark gray wool coat I borrowed from my roommate would do. Then I heard my name. I turned to see Jack, tall and skinny, almost swallowed by an oversized cream-colored cable knit sweater. His hair was pulled back in a tight, low bun, and he looked much more subdued than the last time I saw him. It took me a second to recognize him. He sipped from a to-go coffee cup. "Hey, cutie, you think I was going to stand you up?" I wasn't about to let him keep steamrolling me like always. Nah, I was just wondering about the butched-up outfit. I tried not to show how disappointed I was to see him wearing pants for the first time. The sight threw me off, and judging by the uneasy squirming in my stomach, it wasn't helping to resolve these strange feelings I had. "Yeah, well," he paused, a bit sheepish for once. "The thing is, I'm out at work, but not like out, you know?" I must have still looked confused, because Jack explained, almost apologetically, "I work for this event planning group. They're cool, but we've got a lot of rich clients. They're okay if you're gay, friends of Ellen, and all that, but step outside those boundaries and you've got problems." Hence, boy mode. I still didn't fully get it, but I could tell Jack wasn't eager to elaborate more, so I just nodded and offered a sympathetic sound. Whether or not he believed it, he flashed a smile and looped his arm through mine. He led me out of the park toward the big glass cube a few blocks away that housed the planetarium. We walked through an arched stone bridge and entered, descending a ramp to the ticket counter. Jack told me to wait outside the ropes, a few feet back. I couldn't hear what he was saying to the attendant, but whatever it was, it got a good laugh from her. She handed him an envelope and pointed to the other side of the lobby. We took the long route, weaving through crowds of tourists and avoiding kids posing for photos with models of the universe. Jack's hand rested lightly on the small of my back, guiding me with subtle shifts in pressure. We circled the giant sphere in the center of the building until we reached the far side, where a bored-looking security guard in a cheap blazer blocked our path. Jack showed him a card from the envelope, and the guard opened the door to the courtyard outside. "After you," Jack said with a gentle push, his hand resting just above my butt. The courtyard was all concrete and granite, with only the slightest green around the edges and in the center. It felt larger than necessary for the few people standing around. I glanced back at Jack and got briefly lost in the way the sky and the stone reflected in the depths of his eyes. Waiters in black moved through the space, carrying trays with tiny bites of food and drinks. "What is this?" I asked. "Like I said, I'm in events." Jack gave a subtle nod toward a signboard on an easel not far from the door we just passed through. Caroline and Jonathan was written in bold, looping script, accompanied by today's date and smaller text above and below. Wait, are we crashing a wedding? I glanced around at the other guests, realizing just how underdressed I was compared to the suits and fancy dresses almost everyone else was wearing. Jack chuckled softly, somewhere between a giggle and a snort. "No, relax. It's just an engagement party." "Engagement party? Who can afford to rent out this entire place for something like that?" "People who make everything trend on Pinterest, Insta, and TikTok. We're here to gather intel." He gave me an exaggerated, conspiratorial wink and, as if on cue, grabbed 2 flutes of champagne from a passing waitress. He clinked the glasses together in a cheer, then handed me one. "Now follow me and see how it's done." If Jack had been the life of the party the other night, here he was on another level. He smoothly approached groups of people, effortlessly integrating himself without hesitation. And I was right there with him for every introduction, sometimes as his friend, sometimes as his colleague, occasionally as some guy he met outside, and to a couple of very obvious lesbians, as his boyfriend. I let it slide, knowing by now that he was just messing with me as much as anything. It was fun. I was in a place I would have never come to on my own, enjoying free food and drinks, and hanging out with Jack, which had already proven to be a recipe for a good time. But, just like at the Christmas party, I was never the focus of his attention. It made sense here, he was working or whatever, but still, I couldn't fake interest forever. At some point, I must have shown signs of boredom because Jack pulled me aside. "Look, I got what I needed here," he said, his hand resting on my forearm. "Thanks for putting up with all that." "Yeah, no problem." This time, I didn't pull away. "Cool, I owe you." His smile was wide and captivating. "Come with me, I want to show you something." Jack grabbed my hand and pulled me back inside. He exchanged a quick word with the blazer-wearing guy at the door, who gave us a set of directions. Once he finished, we were off, no more careful guidance, just Jack excitedly pulling me through the museum. We crossed the Great Hall, ignoring the dinosaur skeletons and the dioramas full of taxidermied elephants, hippos, and other beasts. After a couple turns, we started heading against the flow of the crowd, making me wonder even more where Jack was taking me. "You know the big whale?" Jack didn't wait for an answer. "Well, every year for 2 days they close the exhibit to clean it." "Yeah, and?" "And today is the 2nd day." We arrived at the Hall of Ocean Life, where a metal gate was pulled across the entrance. "And I heard from one of the nice people you were too busy daydreaming to listen to, that they finished early." Right as he finished, a mechanical grinding noise started. His voice rose above the clatter. "And we had the place all to ourselves." The gate slowly creaked open, revealing the freshly scrubbed body of a 100-foot-long whale hanging above the room like it was swimming through the air. Jack tugged at my hand, our fingers already intertwined, and I followed him silently inside. The lights were all on, everything looked off with the sharp colors where there would usually be shadows, until we reached the middle of the empty floor, and the usual undersea lighting effects kicked in. A kaleidoscope of blues, purples, and whites danced across the walls and ceiling, and under the giant whale, we were alone. It felt like we were inside a bubble floating in the middle of the ocean, with waves of light and dark shifting around us. Jack grabbed my other hand, stepping closer, our bodies almost touching. He bent down, I tilted up, and slowly, softly, our lips met. The first time my heart was broken, it was because of Jack. We stayed in our little world, swaying to music that existed only in our minds, shared silently through glances and touches. But as the noise of the approaching crowd grew louder, our sanctuary was invaded, snapping me back to reality. I was dancing with a guy. I had kissed a guy. And this time, I couldn't blame it on alcohol or doubt what had happened through the haze of a blackout. I pulled away, needing some space to think, but immediately felt the absence of his warm embrace. We were having fun. I hadn't wanted it to end. But I couldn't figure out if that was because of the adrenaline from our dash across the museum, the romantic setting, or if it was simply because of the person I was with. Jack. He reached out, but stopped before making contact. Ryan, that was. His words trailed off. The silence of what he didn't say hit me. Was it a mistake? That was nice? That was nothing? I wasn't sure what I wished he would have finished saying, and that was the problem. Not what had happened, but how I felt after. To his credit, Jack must have realized I was shaken. He didn't tease or joke, like he usually would. Instead, he showed me a quiet consideration that, in its own way, made things worse. We barely spoke as we made our way back through the museum, my hands stuffed in my pockets, keeping them closed off from the rest of the world. Our goodbyes were quick and awkward. He went one way, and I went the other. I wish I could say I spent the subway ride home thinking everything over, but all I did was stare blankly ahead, reading and rereading the same ads I'd seen a million times before. The familiarity of those ads gave me the distraction I needed. It was easier to shut my brain off and not worry about anything. I spent the next week avoiding being alone. Work, roommates, the bar to watch a game, or hanging out with friends, anything to avoid confronting what had happened with Jack. Of course, that didn't stop me from thinking about him. But with each passing day, it became easier to convince myself, we were friends, things got carried away, he was messing with me, and I didn't stop him before he crossed the line. I should have stopped him. I was actually relieved when he texted me a couple of weeks later. There were no butterflies, no nerves. It was casual, just checking in. We talked a little, and then decided to hang out. I probably should have asked more questions before agreeing to his plans, but Coney Island in February wasn't exactly my first choice. When I arrived, Jack was already there, waiting at the boardwalk. I had no trouble finding him this time, though it helped that we were the only two people there. In the shadow of the old roller coaster, the frozen wind from the ocean kept everyone else away, except for those daring enough to take a polar bear plunge. Jack seemed completely unbothered by the cold, me, not so much. We exchanged hellos and caught up, avoiding the obvious topics. The first thing I noticed was that Jack was wearing makeup again, full face, perfectly done. Nothing smudged, everything blended just right where it needed to and stood out where it should. Icy whites and powdery blues fit the weather, with touches of pink and red adding warmth. His hair, a shoulder-length wave, blew with the wind where it wasn't tucked into a beret. He carried a purse and wore a camel hair coat, belted at the waist and flaring out all the way down to his shins, giving him an exaggerated hourglass silhouette. I had told myself we were just hanging out. I didn't need to think about what he was hiding under that coat, whether it was a skirt or pants. I tried not to let my eyes wander to his hemline, but shiny black boots were all I could see. We walked along the boardwalk for a while, past the ball field and back toward the aquarium. The sound of my boots thudding against the walkway next to the gentle tap of his heels made me feel clumsy. I fought the urge to reach out and hold his hand, maybe for balance, maybe for warmth. "Hey, you think they have a whale in there?" Jack asked, his voice quieter than usual. I gave a half-hearted chuckle. In response, I was knocked off balance by a playful hip check. Jack was quick to catch me, his arm around me the only thing that stopped me from falling. I looked up at him, amazed by how dashing, strong, and beautiful he looked. "Thanks," I muttered, finally standing up straight. Can't say I don't know how to sweep a guy off his feet. Jesus, that line was rough. I rolled my eyes as Jack leaned into me, pressing his body against mine. I tried to ignore him, but when he let out a little whimper and looked at me with the sweetest puppy dog eyes, I couldn't resist. This laugh was real, shared between us just like our smiles. I pushed him away, walking ahead, deliberately slowing my pace to wait for him to catch up. Not that he needed me to, his quick footsteps clacked behind me like muted strikes on a xylophone. Come on. He linked his arm with mine. I know a place we can grab some lunch. He led me away from the beach, through the Russian neighborhood, and into a restaurant with a sign in those backward letters. The dining room inside was much bigger than it looked from outside, 2 floors, with what must have been 100 mostly empty tables. We waited by the door for a moment before the hostess, a towering woman in a shimmering magenta gown with about 10 pounds of makeup, swished around the corner to greet us. Jackie! How are you, doll? She beamed in a thick Slavic accent, taking Jack's hands in her long, manicured ones and kissing him on both cheeks. We were shown to our seats, a table on the balcony overlooking what turned out to be some kind of venue. It was warm inside, and the hostess took our coats to check them, winking at me as she mentioned it was her treat for a friend of Jackie's. That was when I finally figured it out. Jack was wearing a sky blue dress and midnight black tights. The dress hugged his waist before the skirt billowed out, stopping just above his knees. Jack explained that most nights, the place turned into a cabaret, and their drag review was secretly the best show in the borough. I wasn't exactly sold on the idea of a bunch of guys in dresses singing show tunes and pop covers, but I didn't say anything. The menu was a puzzle. Even though it was in English, I didn't recognize most of it. Not wanting to end up with the only 2 items I knew, borscht and vodka, I let Jack order for me. I noticed him taking the chance to show off a bit, tossing a few words in Russian to the incredibly handsome waiter. Why do you do that? I asked. Do what? Flirt with everyone. It's like you're always on. Aw, are you jealous? He rubbed the outside of my leg with his foot under the table. What? No. I guess it feels kinda inauthentic. Like, is that really you? He shook his head. Yeah, like you'd get it. Regular guy over here, never had to, you know what, never mind. Sorry. Great, I killed the mood. I shouldn't have, but I like you, and... I trailed off, caught up in my own words. The food came, tomato salad for him and some kind of stew with chunks of mystery meat for me. Black pepper, dill, and cream, it was really good. When the waiter returned, Jack ordered a pot of tea and a layered pastry filled with nuts and honey. Below us, staff moved around, preparing the stage at the far end of the room. We sipped our tea and nibbled on the dessert while the sound and lighting were tested. Somehow, the flashing strobes and pounding bass beats were the perfect thing to reset the vibe. High tea at the disco, just what we needed. I haven't brought a guy here before, Jack said, pushing the plate of pastry toward me. The show prep had finished, and the room had quieted, except for a few early diners downstairs. I like you too. Cool. Smooth talker. Jack pulled the plate back and took the last piece, dunking it in his tea. I like it here. Sometimes it's nice to go somewhere where I don't stand out. For the first time all day, I thought I understood. Compared to the performers downstairs, a guy like Jack, wearing regular clothes and normal makeup, was barely worth mentioning. I mean, face it, he continued, at that party last summer, you can't say you didn't notice me. He had me there. I'm sure every part of my face was giving me away, even if I wanted to deny it. Blood in the water, Jack was back to his usual teasing self. Shame you were too scared to come talk to me. We would have already gotten all that third date stuff out of the way. I laughed. Yeah, I think there'd have to be a first date for that to make sense. Sweetie, this is our third date. And if you're lucky, I'll even let you be on top tonight. Yeah, good one. Not exactly my kind of joke, but I could play along. You think I finally turned gay? I wonder if any of the girls downstairs are single and want to dance with me? The humor left Jack's face in a flash. Oh my God. You still don't get it. Wait, what did I say? I thought we were just joking around. Jesus, I just can't, Jack said, standing up from the table. Serves you right, Jackie, getting involved with a straight boy. What did I do? Jack, tell me. He looked at me, not with anger, but with disappointment. Come on, Jack. That's what you did. Sorry, Ryan, but do me a favor and lose my number. The hurt hit immediately, dull but unmistakable. I'd been through breakups before, fallen out with friends, so why did this sting so much more? We barely knew each other, and yet I had never felt such a strong connection with anyone. I'd never been so excited to see someone. I had never met anyone who made me want to be better, in all the right ways. And with just a few simple words, he was gone. The first time I tried to move on from Jack, it was harder than I ever imagined. Looking back now, I'm not sure I really wanted to forget, but I was trying. Hell, it was more than a year before we spoke again. That entire spring and summer, we somehow managed to avoid crossing paths. For as many times as we'd run into each other before, suddenly it was like Jack had vanished. Or maybe it was me. I was bailing on Katie and my other friends more often and going out less. It took my roommates pushing me to get me out for the handful of Tinder dates I managed over the next few months. The messed up part? I compared every girl to Jack. Were they as funny? As quick-witted? Could they light up a room full of strangers like he did? Were they as attractive? That part took me the longest to come to terms with. I could swipe right on as many girls as I wanted, but none of them had that charm, that style, that thing that made Jack, Jack. Over time, that impulse faded. So of course, I ran into Jack when I was out with my girlfriend, Sarah. We had been seeing each other for a few months. I wouldn't say it was serious, but we had reached the Saturday trip to IKEA stage. I was hanging back, letting her decide between the Janinga and the Ronange, like it mattered to me at all. I told her I was going to the next section of the maze-like store to see if there were other options, but all I really wanted was to escape. Millions of people live in this city, and millions more visit daily. So many times, you think you see someone you know, an old coworker, a neighbor, the woman who takes the subway at the same time as you, but then you look closer and realize it's just another stranger. So when I saw the woman who looked vaguely familiar, it made sense to think she was just another one of those. I was messing with the running water in a kitchen display, turning the taps on and off, watching the water swirl down the drain when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Ryan? It couldn't be. Hey, Ryan. The voice sounded a little different than I remembered. You know, it's more awkward if you pretend like you don't know me. Of course I knew who it was. No matter how much time had passed, no matter how much I tried to forget, I was fooling myself if I thought I wouldn't recognize Jack in a crowd. But at least this time, I had a little excuse for not picking up on it immediately. Hey, I mumbled. In the early days of my despair, I had thought about what I would say if I saw Jack again. Apologize for whatever I did to upset him? Ask for another chance? And now here he was, and I was completely tongue-tied. You always had a way with words. Thankfully, Jack was still Jack, and I could rely on him to fill the awkward silence. How've you been? You look good. Doing all right, thanks. And you look, I stumbled over my words. Good, too is what I should have said, but for some reason, it didn't feel right. Great or fantastic would have worked better. But instead, I blurted out, you look different. It wasn't a lie. But my brain short-circuited. I definitely wasn't expecting Jack to have feminine parts when I saw him again. No, that wasn't what I should have focused on first, but it wasn't like he was trying to hide them with the low-cut dress. He smirked. Glad to see your eyes are still working. My gaze snapped back up to Jack's face. Shit, sorry. I didn't mean, but like, when did? I gestured vaguely in his direction. Well, I've been on Spiro and estradiol for about 20 months and progesterone for the last year. But that's not what you meant. The implants, they're a little more recent. With one graceful move, he tossed his hair over his shoulder and arched his back. They're C's, in case you're wondering. But I might go bigger. What do you think? My jaw literally dropped. How was I supposed to respond to that? I sputtered, trying to form a sentence, when I was saved. There you are, babe. My girlfriend. Right, I had a girlfriend. I was there shopping with her. She rounded the corner at either the best or worst possible time, it was hard to tell. Oh, who's this? She asked, her voice carrying more edge than curiosity, as she grabbed my arm and pulled herself to my side. I tensed at her touch. Ah, this is Jack. Hi, I'm Jacqueline, she cut me off, an old friend of Ryan's. Sorry about the misunderstanding, I know how bad at introductions he can be. Hi, Jacqueline. I'm Sarah. Ryan's girlfriend. Her grip on my arm didn't loosen. So nice to meet you, and I just love that lip color. You're too sweet. Would you believe it's a drugstore brand? I'd be lying, but I'm not ready to admit how much I paid for it. They both laughed. And can I just say, that skirt looks amazing on you. I used to have one just like it, but I don't think I have the legs to pull off a leather mini. They kept chatting like that for a few more minutes, with me standing there as a silent observer. Well, it was really nice to catch up. Jack was talking to me now, but I have to go find my boyfriend and wherever they keep the stuffed sharks around here. Boyfriend? The word slipped out before I could stop it. And a stuffed shark. Jack waved his fingers with a grin. Nice meeting you, Sarah, and with a slightly lower, almost smoky voice, by Ryan. I couldn't help but watch as he strutted away, his hips swaying with every step. Had his butt always been that round and perky? Was there something else going on there? Like hell she doesn't have the legs. She's practically a rocket, Sarah muttered under her breath. We finished up our shopping and somehow wrestled the new chairs across 2 subway transfers. Back at my place, we unpacked our haul, and I learned that the Ronage was the winner. Hex wrench in hand, I struggled miserably to assemble the pieces. Babe, could you tell me again where Rade goes? I've got arm B, but unless it wants me to drill my own hole, I don't think this is the right piece. I didn't get a response from Sarah as I clumsily tried to fit the pieces together. Babe? You could have just said she was your ex, you know. I'm not dumb. Sarah had set the instructions aside and was scrolling through her phone. She's not my ex, we really are just friends. I got up from the floor and walked over to her. Just friends? She held up her phone to me, showing me an Instagram video. It was a dark scene, someone's apartment. Christmas lights were strung around the room. The camera panned slowly, locking on a couple dancing in the corner. The guy seemed unsteady, being led by his partner, a taller girl in a revealing red outfit. She held her hand above both their heads, drawing his attention to the mistletoe dangling from her fingers. Their faces moved closer, and the camera zoomed in just as he leaned in and kissed her. They kept kissing for 10, then 20, and the remaining 30 seconds of the blurry video before it ended. The clip started over from the beginning. It was clearer the second time, or maybe the third. Where did you find that? Oh no, you don't get to ask questions, not while I'm trying to figure out why my boyfriend is lying to me. I'm not. I whined, my voice rising. I was drunk. That was like 2 years ago, and I barely remember that night. Look, I don't care that you two dated, but I saw you drooling over her today. That's not how you act after a meaningless hookup. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Are you really going to tell me this was the only time? Be honest with me. Yeah. I paused, caught under her glare. Kinda. Kinda? What the hell does that mean? Like you only put it in halfway? What? No. We only kissed. It all seemed so dumb now, my obsessing, my anxiety, all over something as trivial as 1 or 2 kisses. Sarah shook her head. Jesus, Ryan. So you dated a trans girl, big deal. At least stop lying about it. I started to object again, but she cut me off. Forget it. I'm going to stay at my place tonight. She left me, surrounded by disassembled furniture, but there was one thing Sarah said that kept buzzing in my head. The pieces finally clicked, and I felt like the biggest idiot on earth. I dated a trans girl. When I laid it all out, I really should have figured it out a lot sooner, but for whatever reason, I always just thought Jack was a guy who liked to wear women's clothes. I'd heard of some gay guys doing that. And there were drag queens, though I wasn't sure what they counted as. Hey, I said I was stupid, all right? The first time I truly meant it when I said I love you was to Jack. It wasn't immediate. In fact, I probably didn't even realize it at the time, even when I was agonizing over whether I should reach out after the IKEA incident. I tried to patch things up with Sarah, but that night marked the beginning of the end. The arguments became more frequent, and the spark we once had faded. Before I knew it, we were just ghosting each other, and I was single again. The dark pull of depression came calling, but I refused to let myself fall back into that hole. I stayed busy, hitting the gym, picking up extra work projects, and generally doing anything that kept my mind off relationships. The more I kept myself busy, the less I cared about any one thing. I didn't have to think about how much I liked something or whether it was worth doing or if I cared about the people I was doing it with. That's how I ended up signing up for the office charity 5K run. Some logistics were done in-house, but most of the event planning was outsourced to an outside company. Coincidences are just that, coincidences, but our story had its share. So I shouldn't have been surprised when I saw who was leading the project for the event. Still, when I showed up on race day, I didn't expect her to be so hands-on. And yeah, it took me a little longer than it should have, but I eventually got used to thinking of her as she and her. I headed for the registration tent, and there she was, hair pulled up in a tight ponytail, confidently sporting a sports bra and liquor shorts. She was clearly beyond the phase of hiding anything about herself. I didn't want it to be awkward, not like the last time. Hey, Jack, I said, trying to summon some bravado, which lasted about 2 seconds. Oh, shit, sorry. I mean Jacqueline, right? She raised her eyebrows with a smirk. My friends call me Jackie. She scanned my phone code and checked my race entry, then looked back at me like there was something missing. Just you? Is your girlfriend busy or something? I gave a little chuckle, more out of defense than humor. We broke up. That's a shame, she said flatly, her attention back on the screen. She tapped a few things, swiped a couple more, then turned to a box behind her, pulling out 2 race bibs. She handed one to me and pinned the other to her waistband. Looks like I've found myself a partner then. Once Jackie finished with the registration, she met me at the starting line. We took off at a comfortable pace, keeping up with the other runners around us. I should have known she'd try something, and after the first kilometer, she made her move. Jackie surged ahead, leaving me scrambling to keep up with her longer strides. Every time I caught up, she sped up again. I was panting and struggling when I crossed the finish line, about 15 seconds behind her. I bent over, gasping for air, when Jackie came over to me, wiping her chest with a towel and dabbing at her cleavage. I may have gotten a little carried away there. I straightened up, hands on my hips. Little? I gasped out, trying to catch my breath. Just a little, she laughed, handing me her towel like she didn't mind sharing sweat. Damn, I need a shower. After every race, there's a tradition of gathering to celebrate a good run. It's meant to reward the effort and provide an excuse to hang out with old and new friends. I hadn't thought much about it, but I just assumed I'd follow the other racers to wherever the meetup was. but when I looked around at all the people in the finishing area, coworkers I barely talked to outside the office and strangers I hadn't even bothered to ask the names of, there wasn't anyone I'd call a friend. Well, except one person. "So? You coming or not?" Jackie asked, hand outstretched like there was no doubt in her mind about the answer. And honestly, there wasn't. I threw the towel around my neck and accepted. We took an Uber, definitely a nicer ride this time, probably because I was awake and sober. In the backseat, I watched Jackie's hand holding mine, no rings or bracelets, almond-shaped nails painted a pale pink. Her fingers were long and delicate, while mine were stubby and thick. She rubbed a spot on my palm with her thumb, sending ticklish tingles up my forearm. I couldn't help but watch her face, her eyes bright, far from dull like I remembered. Her eyeliner was slightly smudged. Her place was small. Not that I was surprised, she lived alone, but for some reason I had expected something grand. It wasn't run down by any means, it was cozy, warm, inviting, and smelled like Jackie. Like spices and summer flowers. There were 3 rooms, if you counted the entryway that doubled as a kitchen, leading into a 12 by 10-foot rectangle that barely fit a love seat and a coffee table. One door led to the bedroom, and the other to the bathroom. "Make yourself comfortable. I'm going to freshen up." She disappeared into the bedroom, returning moments later, towel wrapped around her waist, holding a bundle of clothes. The apartment was small, offering no privacy. I could hear everything she did in the bathroom, the squeak of the shower knob, the opening and closing of the medicine cabinet, the sound of water hitting her skin. The shower shut off. "Hey, wouldn't your..." I called through the door, but the sound of her hairdryer drowned me out. The hairdryer turned off with a click. "What? Wouldn't your boyfriend mind you inviting a guy over?" "I don't have a boyfriend," she replied casually. "Sorry to hear that." I felt a bit foolish yelling at a closed door. "Don't be." I made him up. The bathroom door opened, and Jackie stepped out, now dressed in gray sweatpants and a simple t-shirt. Her body looked plain in the ill-fitting clothes. Her chest was flat, her shoulders broad, her face free of makeup, nails trimmed short and colorless. Her short hair was messy, tucked into a very noticeable wig. She stood there, shifting, as if bracing for something to happen. "Why?" I muttered, barely audible. "Because." She fiddled with the skin on one thumb. "I was jealous, okay? You were with some cute girl, all domestic and happy, and I'd been trying to get over you for a year. Maybe I just wanted you to feel a little bit of what I felt. There, that's the truth." "Oh. I meant, why are you dressed like that?" Jackie glanced at herself, as if just realizing what she was wearing. "No reason, just felt like being comfortable," she shrugged. "Why? Is there something wrong with a girl in sweatpants?" I wouldn't want to send mixed signals. Her tone was sharp. "Come on, that's not fair." I didn't understand why she was suddenly so upset. She crossed her arms. "Isn't it? We've tried this before, Ryan, but I'm not going to do this if you can't see me as a woman. And just so you know, I'm always a woman, no matter what I wear or how I look." I couldn't help but laugh. I'd never seen Jackie so serious, but the way she was making her point was funny. She looked like a teenager raiding her older brother's closet, but I understood what she was doing. Stripped of any trace of femininity, she looked like how I had seen her from across the room months ago at that party, and none of it mattered. All I saw was the woman I had been chasing, even if I hadn't realized it sooner. I stood up from the couch, and before Jackie could say anything, I cupped her face in my hands. I kissed her with everything I had, every bit of frustration, confusion, and yearning. Our lips met, our breath synced, our senses connected. A moan slipped out from either her or me, I couldn't tell. We pulled away, staring into each other's eyes. "Jackie, I love you. I don't care if you change or stay the same, I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes widened. What did you say? Oh, no. You love me? I had messed up. We weren't even together yet, and I had to sound crazy saying that. You live with me, she teased, grinning like a cat with a prize. There was only one way to wipe that grin off her face. I kissed her again. Yeah, I love you. Got a problem with that? Jackie yanked off her wig, pulling out bobby pins and letting her hair fall free around her shoulders. You big dummy. I wouldn't have done all this if I didn't love you, too. Our lips met again, and she pulled me toward the bedroom. My shirt was yanked off as I stumbled on the laundry-covered floor. I fell back onto her bed, and Jackie followed, pressing her weight down on me. Well, let's just say I lost count of how many times I said I love you after that. I never seemed to get a tie tied on the first try. If it were up to me, I'd have those things rounded up and thrown into a fire, sacrificed to the gods of basketball shorts. But, unfortunately, society doesn't always follow my preferences, and as much as I wished otherwise, the dress code for most weddings was a little fancier than pajamas. From far above, the church bells rang twice. I was running behind, and if only I could get this stupid knot right. I shook my head, the stress of the day weighing on me. Seriously? A noose? I thought the bride was supposed to be the dramatic one. Over, up, and down. Hold one end, pull, and that was going to have to do. I tucked the tie into my vest, buttoned it up, and threw on my jacket. A quick glance in the mirror confirmed it wasn't perfect, but it would do. The sight reminded me I was stressing for no reason. Nobody would be focusing on our ties anyway. A knock at the door followed by the creak of old wood. Ryan, what are you still doing in here? It was Jackie, my stunning fiancée, checking in on me. I spun around. Whoa! Aren't we not supposed to see each other before the ceremony? She laughed. That's for the bride and groom, you dummy. And considering your sister had us all up before dawn for hair and makeup, I want everyone to see how good I look. Sometimes, you hear a word so many times that it finally clicks. Breathtaking was one of those, until the woman you love stands before you, looking like a princess from some fairy tale. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Forget finding the right thing to say, remembering to breathe was hard enough. Her hair was braided in intricate ropes, falling down her back in a single plait, adorned with flowers and ribbons. Her skin had a glow that seemed to come from within, and her eyes were bright and wide, framed by her delicate, upturned nose. A sprinkle of freckles dotted her cheeks, maybe drawn on this morning or appearing overnight. Her lips were full, pink, and glossy, so inviting. I leaned in to kiss her but was stopped by her hand on my shoulder. No way. You're not messing up this makeup. Jackie brushed a speck of lint off my jacket and stepped back to evaluate me. You know, there are YouTube tutorials for this. She sighed and began adjusting my tie. Easier said than done. Believe me, I tried. I reached to loosen it a bit, but she swatted my hands away. How did you get so good at this? 12 years in an all-boys Catholic school will teach you how to tie a tie, she replied, spinning me back toward the mirror. She looped her arm through mine and added, "Bet the nuns would be shocked if they saw what I swapped my Sunday best for." Jackie had privately complained about how tough my sister had been choosing bridesmaids' gowns, but seeing how the silky green dress hugged her body, with just the right amount of cleavage showing and a slit up the leg, I'd say the frustration had been worth it. It certainly beat the look my future brother-in-law had chosen, full Scottish attire, wool everything, a starched shirt, and yes, a kilt. It wasn't that I was worried about wearing it, I just didn't want every picture from my sister's wedding to show me in that ridiculous outfit. You know, I didn't think this would be the part you needed help with. No, the worst part was how much fun Jackie was having with all of this. You sure you don't need help with the tuck? It'd be a shame if there were any uncomfortable bulges while you're standing at the altar. She barely contained a giggle. For the past week, ever since the suit and kilt came back from the tailor's, she had been relentless, her razor on my nightstand next to an article about how to get the smoothest legs, constant reminders to keep my knees together even while wearing pants, and casually leaving a pair of panties on top of my folded laundry. I exaggerated a sigh. You done? Olivia's going to kill us if we hold up her big day. Geez, tough guy can't take a joke. Oh right, what was it again? A real man doesn't wear a skirt? I shook my head and started heading toward the door. That's not what I said. And besides, it's not a skirt, it's a kilt. Maybe, but I've got this really cute black mini that never fit me right, and some thigh highs to go with it. Oh, and your lashes are so long, you'd only need a bit of mascara. She pinched my rear, causing me to jump. All right. I get it. You're going to regret that. Jackie's hand slid around to the front of my kilt. I turned to face her, looking up to catch the barely hidden glint of desire in her eyes. I had gotten used to the height difference a long time ago, but with her platform heels, thanks to my sister's choice, she loomed over me. I love my big, strong man, she teased, tapping my nose with her long, manicured finger with each word, no matter what you're wearing. What could I do? She'd made her point, one that had been clear for a while. A soft smile spread across my face. I love you, too. I slipped my arm around hers again, just like I would in a few minutes when we walked down the aisle together during the wedding processional. We stepped out into the chapel, the musicians began to play, and we waited our turn as two other couples walked down the aisle ahead of us. A cool breeze brushed against my exposed legs, followed by a warm breath against my ear, the contrast sending a shiver down my spine. Hey, do you think tonight? She hesitated for a moment, her voice almost shy. Do you think you can keep the kilt on? Thanks for watching. If you liked this story, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Also, consider becoming a member for exclusive stories and early access.